Friends and fellow citizens, 9 years from now, I hope whoever has to do this job will not have to use 4 languages. It is an impossible imposition and an unnecessary imposition. We should resolve it, and we can resolve it. We cannot use 1 language, but I think we should be able to get by with 2. And if whoever can speak an extra 1, 3, then that's a bonus. Our whole economic future depends on our educational system, the levels of skills we are able to attain, the levels of professional competence, which in turn depends on language competence. I am fairly sanguine, quite confident, that if we could do it in the last 14 years, when most of our students were from Chinese medium schools, Malay medium schools, some from even Tamil secondary medium schools like Uma Pulava, and we could still do it, make it to university, learn the sciences, even though we don't speak standard English, then we can do it now that the majority are in English schools. But don't overload the child. It is a real burden. 10 years ago, I would not have minded repeating all that I'm in fact spreading over 4 languages in each language. But it's too burdensome. And it's quite unnecessary. What is the profit of being able to read a Chinese character in 2 pronunciations? One in Mandarin, one in Hokkien. Worse, you've got to think each time of the different idioms. What is the advantage? Before I explain the importance of language command, let me give you my experience, which I've had very recently in Mauritius. It was a revelation to me. They learn 3 languages in school. Before independence, they learned 2 languages, French and English. The British took it over from the French in 1814 after the Napoleonic Wars and promised to carry on teaching the French language. 30% Creole or African and African-French mixed descent, 60% Indian, 3% Franco-Mauritian, which means French descent, 3% Chinese, Cantonese, and Hakka, half Cantonese, half Hakka, and a few others. They spend most of their time talking Creole. What is Creole? It is what the Africans who were brought over as slaves have made of the French language. Is French words, African pronunciation, African grammar. And there are language experts both in Britain and in America who have studied the language and say, yes, they speak almost the same Creole in Mauritius as in Guadeloupe and Martinique in the Caribbean. So it's a language. So obviously, whatever Africans' dialects that provided the pronunciation and the grammar were common to both these places in the Indian Ocean and in the Caribbean. 2/3 of the day spent talking Creole. Then the educated talk to each other in French, which is the language of the cultivated. Then they carry out the administration in English. And with independence in 1968, they taught the mother tongue and added Hindi, Urdu, Mandarin. Now there is an opposition party called MMM, Militant Mouvement Mauricien, the Militant Mauritian Movement. And they say, make Creole an official language. Write it in the newspapers, debate it in Parliament. So when I come back to Singapore, I'm grateful that our language problems are not as complex. But let's lessen it. Every word that you have to remember is in the storage bank. Maybe it's infinite or infinite. They tell me that I have 10,000 neurons, 10 billion neurons. And each neuron has multiple dendrites, and each dendrite is linked with other dendrites of other neurons. But I'll tell you, and any man who's an honest man will tell you, that there's a limit to what is possible for immediate recall. Hence, the value of not overloading. For immediate recall, there is a finite storage. May vary, 10,000 items for a genius, 5,000 for a very bright man. I settle for 3,000. Instant recall of words. You multiply that by 2, that's 6,000. So you've got to decide what you give up of other items you must remember. And as we go up this technological ladder, we just can't waste our time messing around with languages. This is a problem not just for Singapore, it's a problem which on a continental scale today faces Europe. Europe with 200, the EEC has got 250 million, or 260 million people, more than the United States of America. But they are speaking 7 different languages. And when they meet in Strasbourg at the European Parliament, they have interpreters. Immense amount of effort. I asked the EEC commissioners when they meet, what do they do? It says, 9 commissioners, only 1, an Italian doesn't understand English. So he's given an interpreter and the meetings carry on in English. And a running interpretation is given or whispered to the Italian. And the work gets done. And that's our Singapore position. Let's move and move swiftly into our common working language. We have solved old problems. 14 years. I don't think we can look 14 years ahead. It's difficult even to look 4 years ahead. But you can be sure that the problems which are coming up will be entirely different in quality, qualitatively different from what they were in the past. It's one interdependent, interreacting world. The Shah has to leave. Iran is in chaos. Production of oil goes down from 6 million barrels a day to 3 million. Sometimes they say 4 million. Nobody really knows. But the oil companies know that there is a 5% shortage between supply and demand. And this is the realities that we are moving into, an interdependent one world. In the midst of all this uncertainty, you may ask me, why did we agree to the NWC recommendation of $32.07, plus a 2% cess for retraining? 32 plus 7% makes about 18% of the average semi-skilled worker wage of $250. Plus 2% makes, retraining cess makes it 20%. It's done deliberately, and there is an element of risk. And because there was an element of risk, we therefore pushed 4% into CPF and 2% into retraining cess, so the worker doesn't get used to spending the 6%. So if things do go wrong, we got 6% that can be taken back without the worker suffering. And you have read Dr. Goh, or you've heard him, I've read him. All being well, this will be repeated next year, the year after, and over 3 years, we should have moved out from a low wage to a middle wage economy. What's the rationale? Well, first, what is the alternative? It is to carry on as we have been doing. We were playing safe after the oil crisis in 1973. So we had 6, 7, 8% increases every year. This year we could have had another 8. Instead of making it 18 plus 2, 20%. I tell you the risks involved. Last year, we had a record influx of work permit holders, nearly approaching 20,000. We carry on at this rate, we can safely and quite accurately forecast a further input of 20, perhaps 25,000 work permit holders. 5 years, you've got 150,000. 10 years, you've got 250,000. Is it bearable? Maybe it is. Because if they were from our traditional sources, Malaysians, well, there's very minimal cultural and language problems. But last year we started moving out. There were not enough Malaysians. We moved and took work permit holders from Thailand, Sri Lanka, from India, from Bangladesh. Very good workers. The shipyards will tell you that they work harder than Singaporeans. Better in the heat. But I have a responsibility to you. 10 years, can we digest so many? I think yes, but a lot of cultural, linguistic, and social problems, and political problems. We know that the risk of upping wages is to run into difficulties if there's a recession. At the moment, the EDB has got in its pipeline $2 billion worth of investments on petrochemicals. I think they call it Petrochemical Corporation of Singapore, PCS. That's $2 billion. Production 1982, it will provide only 2,000 jobs. That's the kind of investment we want. High capital per worker, high value added. All automation, meters, controlled pollution, and it can pay good wages for engineers, chemical engineers, technicians, computer programmers, the lot. They have also in their pipeline another 1.2 billion investments that will provide 18,000 jobs over 3-4 years. They estimate the existing industries will expand each year, providing 17,000 jobs for 5 years. So let's take this plunge. It's a risk, but the other risk of not doing it is higher. This risk is a calculated one and an acceptable one. And in any case, if we run into a recession, we've got 4% CPF and 2% training cess, that's 6%. Next year, if we repeat it, it'll become 12%. If it were left to me, if I had been, this is part of the process of getting a younger generation to learn to make the decisions. I was away when the NWC final acceptance was taken, so I wasn't present at the cabinet meeting. If it were me present, I would have pressed from the worker another 1% into CPF. I don't believe in people. Look at the problems of giving people more money. Earlier than they needed, 20%, 2% CPF, 2% training cess, 18%. This year, we calculate, so far, there's been an inflation of about 2.5%. January to July. July to December, we estimate a minimum of 4, a maximum of 5.5%. Sorry, a minimum of 3, a maximum of 4.5. Let me look at my notes. Yes, 3 to 4.5. I'll be releasing these tables for the press tomorrow, but I'll just give you the rough breakdown. Increase of oil prices is responsible for 1.5%, bus fares, electricity, taxi fares, petrol, diesel. Imports 0.5%, that's 2%. NWC will cause a minimum of 1% and a maximum of 2.5%. That's the range. Now, if we had taken 1 more percent from the worker side and put it to CPF, then it'll be 1 to 2%, you see. The worker will have less money to go and spend at the hawker center and in the shops and save for the future. But anyway, the real wage rise, this is in real terms, 18%, let's say the inflation rate is 7% maximum. It may be 5.5, but take it at 7, that leaves us a 12% rise in real wages. Of that, 4% is in CPF. Real rise in real income, real spending power of 7%. Not bad. If we don't do this, let me explain the problems. People have seen how Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, Singapore has done it. Malaysia is industrializing and fast. That's why we are now going as far afield as Bangladesh, India, and Sri Lanka for workers. There isn't, true they are paid more in Singapore, but why should they come down when they've got their jobs at home? And more, simple manufacture will move into these countries. We have seen how Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong has done it. Others have seen them and seen us. Now Sri Lanka, Bangladesh doing likewise. So not only will we be meeting competition from what are called NICs, newly industrializing countries, NIC, NICs of East Asia, we will also meet a group of developing countries moving in the wake of these NICs. What was wrong with Sri Lanka? Wrong policies. Administration went slack. Now they are out to follow what others have successfully done. And they will get the investments because they have educated workers. Let me explain the advantage of English. This is to drive home my point. I was talking to an American manufacturer at dinner. He makes, in Singapore, something called constant speed drive. This was last year. In every jet engine, you put one of these machines. It's a dynamo. It controls the speed of the dynamo. When you ride a bicycle, the faster you go, the brighter the lamp becomes because the faster the dynamo is spinning. This gadget makes it possible for the jet to go faster and faster, but the electricity to remain constant. So I asked him, what happens if there's a recession? He says, no worry of that. The number of aeroplanes on order means that there'll be a demand for constant speed drives over the next 5 years, regardless of recessions. No danger of protectionism, because this is the only manufacturer in the world. Even the Russians are buying this to put in their jet engine. I asked him why he came to Singapore. He studied Korea, he studied Taiwan, he studied Singapore. He said, you speak English. And I don't want any messing around, making mistakes on millimeters, translating in the language. You either understand the instructions or you don't. You speak English, your workers are good, I'm here. And that's a fact of life. We made the right decisions. I'll tell you another reason why we took this risk. Because regardless of how poorly the world economy may be doing, you know that the American economy has had negative growth rates for one quarter, expected this quarter too, so that officially will become a recession. Japanese will make 5 to 6%, the EEC will make 3 to 3.5% for this year, this fiscal year. But the ASEAN countries, our neighbors, have been making 8, 9%. And the East Asian countries, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Japan, are buoyant, and we are plugged in with them. And two of our neighbors, Malaysia and Indonesia, are oil exporters. Every time the price of oil goes up, their development plans can expand. So on balance, we'll get by. But there is, of course, a problem, and I recognize it, for the small manufacturer. And they are Singaporeans. Well, we are giving them 3 years of adjustment. It's inevitable. If we don't do this, upping wages whilst allowing work permit holders to come in, we can do it the other way. Just leave wages to free play, market forces, cut down on work permit holders. And I believe it will go up faster than the 20%. So between the two, it's better that we allow an inflow, less dislocation, than to stop the inflow and allow free adjustment of wage rates. They have got to learn how to do with less labor. Mechanize, automate, computerize, rationalize management, rationalize use of labor. In some industries, it's possible. In some industries, they can see what has happened in Japan, in Korea, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong. The bright and the enterprising will survive, either in Singapore or in Malaysia or in Indonesia. There's Batam waiting to be developed. There's Sri Lanka, there's Thailand, there's the Philippines. But if we don't move out of these export-sensitive items, and our manufacturers are by and large in the export-sensitive markets, we get caught constantly with protectionist problems, we are in unnecessary jeopardy. Let's move to more constant speed drives, micrometers, miniature ball bearings. Nobody is going to give us problems over them. No, protectionism is no barrier. That's our strategy. We move ahead or we are overtaken by events. The EDB has set up a local industries section to help our manufacturers. But I urge them, don't try and work it out from first principles. Just see what has been done. Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, Japan. If they can mechanize, the Japanese would have thought of a way. And so would the Taiwanese and the people in Hong Kong. Just study them. There's a strange streak in the Singaporean. He wants to start from first principles when we can learn and see what has already happened elsewhere. The same principles are at work, same cost of oil, same cost of anti-pollution devices, same available patents. Ministry of Finance and Trade and Industry are also working out rapid depreciation rates for new plants and labor-saving machinery to help in this shift. But whether an industry stays in Singapore, rationalized management, better used labor, better automated, or it has to go elsewhere, will depend on open market forces. And that is what in fact we are doing, spread over 3 years. Rather than allow open market forces immediately to bring about this adjustment, we have upped it, but allowed up wages, but allow free inflow of work permit holders. What we must do is really achieve our maximum, which means using the talent that we've got to maximum advantage, which is what the Japanese have done. No natural resources, 100 million Japanese, 900 million Chinese. I don't know, I don't believe the Japanese are that much cleverer than the Chinese, but look at the productivity. And it's knowledge, know-how, organization, technical skills, the technology, the capital that they have, the trading knowledge, the links they have with the rest of the world, which will take China's 4 modernizations into the next century before she catches up. And by then the Japanese would have gone on. It's a realistic appraisal that enables them to decide that they will concentrate on things like television sets and motor cars instead of jet engines and rockets. The British went and competed against the Americans for jet engines, the Comet versus the Boeing, they lost. The VC-10 versus the DC-10, they lost. Now they have neglected the TV set, so Hitachi is going in with RAN to manufacture. Hitachi brings in TV technology to Britain. Honda brings in motorcar technology to British leylands. It's the capacity of a society collectively to make adjustments. When I met Mr. Fukuda 2 years ago in Kuala Lumpur, August '77, he explained to me the 17 critical industries Japan had. Petrochemicals amongst them, textiles, shipbuilding, and so on. And they were calculating which ones they could rationalize and save and which ones have to go. And I believe they have made up their minds which one have to go, because we are seeing a consistent pattern. Certain types of industries are moving into Korea, into Taiwan, into Hong Kong, into Singapore. They are better than what we have, and we'd be fools if we didn't take them. We've got the stability, they know that. We've got the productivity and the political links with the trading world. And we are in what I would term a constructive syndrome. You can be in a destructive syndrome. I've seen some countries caught in that bind. Revolution, riots because of unemployment, despair, dismay, governments topple, problems unsolved, more revolution, more riots. If you watch some countries, you say to yourself, God forbid that should happened to us. And every time I go to such a country, I leave relieved that we escaped that syndrome. We have solved our basic problems of unemployment, poor education, poor housing. We've got employment, housing, education. Now we're on a constructive track. Better education, better skills, better incomes, better homes. HDB putting new generation flats. Old ones will be knocked down, new ones will be built. HUDC will come out with new generation flats too. And so we go on. Upwards. In short, we dared to achieve. That's what we had the courage to do. People wrote us off in 1965, said no chance. We couldn't accept that verdict. We said we'll make it. And the people had the guts and the gumption, and the government provided practical policies. That combination worked. New problems are coming. They can be solved. They will be solved. And the nub of the problem for a continual solving of these problems is to find new problem solvers, because you know we are not indestructible. Comes a time when the baton must be handed over. And the new problems will be different. But the processes required to solve them are the same. The quality of the population has not deteriorated, in fact, is improved. Talent, the same. Skills and expertise, higher. I see a core of people who've got the ability, the intellectual grasp, the integrity, and the drive. There are two things that have yet to be proven. One is the ability to communicate. They got to learn this. Reduce complex problems into simple terms, because you've got to explain, to convince, to mobilize people behind these plans. Then they are away. It's partly learned, but partly inborn. The other quality which I won't know, and nobody, I believe, can tell you, is what happens under crisis. There are two schools of thought. Dr. Go once asked a Japanese general, he says, how do you find out whether a commander will stand up under fire? Because he wanted to find out who are the commanders that he's got who will stand up and who won't. The Japanese general said to him, there's no way. We just wait till the fire comes, then you know who are the ones who are cool and collected and who are not. And sometimes the ones you thought, or he thought, the Japanese thought, would be the calmest and the coolest and the most calculating under fire. They crack. And the least promising turn out to be the ones with the ballast, with the calm, the detachment, and the verve under pressure. I don't believe that. I say, yes, that's true. But look at Apollo 13. The Americans had to choose astronauts. You know, Apollo 13 was the one that went to the moon, and a fault developed, and they had only one chance to go, listen to ground control, preserve power, take one swing around the moon and come back. If they miss it, they will go forever and ever into outer space. If any one of the three had panicked, all three would have gone. The Americans must have found some way to have put them into pressure chambers, claustrophobic conditions, real fright, simulated fright, and eliminated those who panicked. Not one of the three panicked. Apollo 13 came back. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can find 3 such astronauts, I advise you to invest your future in Singapore. Long after this government has stood down, and we are going to find them. I think we got a chance of every group of men, when they achieve the final achievement, is to see the creation continue. That means the ability to select, to judge, to impart experience and say, now, the rest is up to you. There will be new problems, but the basic elements at work are the same. Human beings, the same all over. The world is different. The economy is more complex and sophisticated. But what makes a society tick, what gives it the flexibility, the cohesiveness, the thrust, seeking new ways to overcome new problems or even old problems. That's as old as the beginning of man and the first tribes. And that, I hope, will be the story of Singapore. Thank you. Good night.